Mike's Daily Podcast.
Hello, welcome to the show. It's Mike Matthews, episode 2342,
Mike's Daily Podcast.
On a day after the Thanksgiving weekend, and we're all happy that we're out of our job, because Mondays always stink, especially after a 4-day weekend. I don't think I'm going to sing anymore because I'm done with my song. Welcome to Cafe Anyway, somewhere in Podcastro Valley.
Mike's Daily Podcast.
Podcastro Valley, Mont. Today I'm just going to poke around in some interesting things in the thought world, in the thoughts of the life
Daily
of everybody that we know,
Podcast.
things that we're thinking and stuff.
Yeah!
I started watching a little bit of The Return of the Pink Panther last night with Peter Sellers. He was a British actor who could do all kinds of impressions. He was quite funny, got popular. I think, and I'm probably a little bit off with my movie knowledge, but I believe it was Dr. Strangelove, How I Found Out I Loved the Bomb, or whatever it was called. He was in that, played something like 3 different characters. And then Inspector Clouseau became very famous, his French accent, because it's okay to make fun of the French. Even though he makes fun, he says he refers to his roommate, Kato, who is Asian, in some not-so-friendly terms in this movie that I saw last night. I was rewatching it. I believe it's from 76 or 77. I originally saw the movie with my grandmother when I was a little kid, and we saw it at the Cinerama Dome in Hollywood. And I believe we were walking. That's also where we saw Fantasia. It was re-released in the 70s. Apparently, when it first came out, it was a flop. People didn't understand it. But we saw it later. I remember a guy stopping us in the parking lot and is talking to my grandma and I, and would not stop talking. And it was one of those situations where you...
And here's today's podcast picture.
You didn't want to be mean, but you had to be mean because the guy wasn't picking up on your social cues. You're trying to tell him, hey, we gotta go, and he kept talking and talking. And he asked some question, and it came out that I got stomach aches eating cereal in the morning. And it's basically because I'm lactose intolerant. My body can't process milk, has never been able to process milk very well. And he said, oh, just put a little bit of soda water in his cereal. And like, what? Like, that's going to help? Yeah, Basil, I know. It's an odd story to start the podcast with, but still, thought it was interesting. To this day, I don't drink milk. I drink almond milk. Thankfully, there's that now. There wasn't that when I was a kid. That's right, Basil. It was an awful world that I grew up in. But the Cinema Dome, whatever it's called, that was a lot of fun. I think it's still there. That's the late, great Basil the Boxer right there. And a podcast picture today will go with something recently. The last one was a picture of a beautiful birthday card my lovely lady friend gave to me on my birthday a week ago today, as I became 53. Now in my mid-50s. Look at that. I was watching a thing about a guy named Sinister Seymour. I had no idea. A lot of sibilance going on in that name. Didn't know about this guy. Apparently, he was quite popular on Los Angeles TV. He was an Elvira type who had set up the horror movie flick show. Who's the guy that we got, Svengali? Whoever that guy is up in the Bay Area. He did that kind of thing. Big movie file, horror movie file, and he'd make fun of the movies. And it was Knott's Berry Farm that was setting up a special evening, a meet and greet, to meet him. And the guy who was running the meet and greet said, hey, why don't we just make the whole park after 6 o'clock in the evening, since that's when Sinister Seymour is going to show up, why don't we just make the whole park turn into like a Halloween night type thing? And they suggested the idea to the people that ran the park. It was the Knott's family, Knott's Berry Farm, run by the Knott's family. And the Knott's family said they were not into that idea. Probably thought, oh, Halloween's evil. Then somehow the original owner of Knott's Berry Farm, Walter Knott, heard about it and he liked the idea. So they ended up doing it, and later became Knott's Scary Farm, which they still do to this day. I think I went there probably in the 70s. This started in 71, but I think I went there in the late 70s, early 80s. And now it's over the top, high tech, fantastically crazy, and overly crowded. I don't think I would go now, but the video I've seen on YouTube of some of the rides, pretty imaginative. Not just gore and scary, but like actually creative type interesting things. I think one of them is you're walking under the ocean. It's like you're walking underwater. Some weird thing, and you meet shark people. And so this guy, Sinister Seymour, he died at the age of 50. The pictures of him around the age of 50, in his late 40s, he looked ancient. He had a kind of a scary look about him. He was tall. He wore this dark cape, dark hat. Think of what's his name, Darkwing Duck. Kind of looked like that guy. But wow, 50, so young, and yet that's the thing, is we don't realize how short life is on this planet. It can be even shorter than we think it is sometimes. Someone who is only 37 and going through some rough times in her life is Elizabeth Holmes. Yes, she's quite odd. She talked with that deep voice. She did that video where she stared right into the camera and didn't blink for however long that video was. Some interesting testimony came out recently, and she started that flawed blood testing technology startup, had all this money, had all of these old white guys duped that were dumping money into it. And then, so she's been going to trial here lately, and as we go outside a cafe anyway, we're bringing Mike's Daily Podcast somewhere in Podcastro Valley, Mont, the last place on earth. She testified she was raped at Stanford, and she gave this testimony as she was crying. A factor she believes played a role in what she characterized as her later subservience to Sunny Balwani. Yes, she described herself as the abused puppet of her former lover and business partner, Sunny Balwani, who is now 56. They became romantically involved in 2005 before Balwani became chief operating officer at Theranos. That was the company that they had. A position he held from 2009 to 2016, 7 years. Even before joining Theranos, Balwani was regularly berating Holmes as an inept executive who needed to kill her former self in an effort to become more disciplined and focused, according to her testimony. And then there was also contemporaneous notes with strict instructions for her handwritten by Balwani. He felt like I came across as a little girl and thought I needed to be more serious and more pointed, as she explained as she read through Balwani's demands. They included spending at least 30 minutes each morning writing out her daily goals and never spending more than 5 minutes meeting with anyone. No more than 5 minutes, unless she had written down a reason justifying the additional time. Wonder what that's about. If she didn't do what Balwani said, Holmes said he would yell at and tell her he was so disappointed in my mediocrity, she said. How come only 5 minutes, though? That's interesting. Is it because any more than 5 minutes you can't keep the act up? You can't keep with the shtick, with the ruse? So how do you know if you have controlling people in your life, Balwanis in your life? Controlling people are often manipulate others. They often manipulate others by making them feel like they are everything for a short amount of time. They may flatter you, compliment you, buy you gifts, but be wary, as this praise and affection can quickly change to belittling and bullying It can change like that. The inconsistency is confusing because you're not sure where you stand with someone. This puts you on the back foot and gives the other person the control they desire. Controlling people often have a problem with the words no and sorry. They won't take no for an answer because they are determined to have their own way. As a result, people with a controlling personality often excel in corporate environments where they climb a career ladder without concern for the people around them. Similarly, a controlling person will struggle with saying sorry in a genuine capacity. This is because saying sorry would suggest that they were in the wrong and it would put them in a weaker social position. A classic sign of a controlling person is they want you all to themselves. They may suggest that you don't need anyone else and gradually isolate you from other friends and family. This creates a codependency over time that leaves you in a position where you are susceptible to being controlled. This behavior is especially common in romantic relationships with controlling people. This according to learning-mind.com. They also want to change you. Controlling people almost treat other people like projects and will often want to change you into the person that suits them best. There is always someone else. Controlling people often hedge their bets and keep several people close to them. Not only does this mean that there are more people in control, more people for them to control, but it puts others in a vulnerable position too. If the controlling person isn't getting their way, they can threaten to leave and focus their attention to someone else. Suddenly they may start ignoring your calls because they are so busy with someone else. And that leaves you feeling needy and more susceptible to being controlled. And yes, they're jealous as well. This, according to Ruth Newton, has a diverse background in writing and film production with a degree in English literature from the Goldsmiths, University of London, and a Master of Arts degree in documentary film from the University of Sussex. She has written plays, magazine articles, and TV scripts. And she wrote that for learning-mind.com. If you feel at risk from the controlling person, seek help from other people outside of that relationship. In severe cases, professional help may be the most useful thing. There are plenty of resources to advise on how to deal with controlling and manipulative people. Outside a cafe, anyway, somewhere in Podcastro Valley. Think about that. I hope that helped you. Look who's here.
Hello, my Panthers. It's Chely Shoehart, gift shop supervisor. Was I just here?
Yes, but we've been doing it daily lately, so yeah, you were just here like 3 days ago or something.
Oh, okay, Mike Matthews. Were you manipulating me to make sure that I was here on Mike's Daily Podcast?
Yes, no, I asked, or you just showed up, I'm not sure. I put it in the blog that you were going to be here next time for the next show, and here you are, so I want to thank you.
It's okay, Mike Matthews. You're not manipulative. I was just kidding. Haha.
Thank you, Chely Shoehart. You keep me on my toes and on my back foot. Look who else is here.
Oh, Mike, this is Floyd the Floorman.
And this is John Deere, the engineer, Mike. It was really fascinating what you were talking about there, and we should all be careful about manipulative, controlling people.
That's right. That's the takeaway from today's podcast. Next podcast, it'll be the wonderful Benita, the Disgruntled Fiddle Player, and the Brewmaster chime in about anything that we covered today. 336mm daily. 3 plus 3 equals 6. As in Mike Matthews daily, as in what this podcast has been now for quite a few days. Sometimes I get interrupted. Sometimes that happens, and sometimes things happen, and sometimes you get manipulated, and sometimes they're controlling people. But you got to say no to them. And when you say no, it may hurt, may be difficult to decompress or to cut the cords, as it were. Cut the cords connecting you. As I am reevaluating all the expressions I use, I guess that's an okay expression. That's true. That's a true expression. I will keep using that expression because it's true. So you could cut the cords to those people that are manipulating you and hurting you. You don't need that in your life. You need positive people in your life. And that's all I have to say about that. Take us out, A-Frame.
Mike's Daily Podcast is written and produced and performed by Mike Matthews. His podcast is super easy to find. Download or listen to his show and read his blog at MikesDailyPodcast.com. Email Mike now at MikesDailyPodcast@gmail.com. See you tomorrow. Bye!